Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Agorist Project. My name is Steven. Today, we're going to be going over the fourth installment of Agorist Project, an article titled Alpha and Omega, Parts 1 and 2, The Beginning and the End of the Enemy of the State. Go ahead and like us on Facebook at facebook.com/Agorist Project, where you can also find our articles on agoristproject.wordpress.com. All of these articles are on the blog site, written out. We have just recently decided to go into YouTube and to start doing the video blogs as well. So this one here, Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end of the enemy of the state, is going to be a look through the life, the beginning, the end of Jesus. Going to open up with a couple of scripture verses, and as we go into each part, first one here is going to be Matthew chapter 2, verses 1 through 6. Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea during the reign of King Herod. About that time, some wise men from eastern lands arrived in Jerusalem asking, "Where is the newborn King of the Jews? We saw his star as it rose, and we have come to worship him." King Herod was deeply disturbed when he heard this, as was everyone in Jerusalem. He called a meeting of the leading priests and teachers of religious law and asked, "Where is the Messiah supposed to be born?" "In Bethlehem in Judea," they said, "for this is what the prophet wrote. And you, O Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are not the least among the ruling cities of Judah, for a ruler will come from you who will be the shepherd for my people Israel." So now, from the very moment of Jesus' birth into the world which he became an imminent threat to the powers which held it, King Herod became extremely disturbed upon hearing of a newborn king and drove into immediate action in order to protect the kingdom he had built. Herod was born a Jew in Idumea, just south of Judea, where he would eventually be named King of the Jews by the Roman Senate after climbing the political Roman hierarchy. For years, Herod would build this reputation among the Romans until finally his hard work had paid off when he helped the Romans expand their empire with the conquering of Judea. Being a Jew born in the land, the Romans thought it a good political decision to allow Herod to be the sole ruler of the new Roman client state, as the people would be less likely to revolt against one of their own, thus the birth of the Herodian kingdom. But it was Herod's lifelong ambition to become king of the Jews, and now there was speak of another whom the people believed had claim to the very throne he himself sat on. Any threat to this position of power would be labeled treason in any kingdom, and Herod would not have his kingdom usurped. Jesus' very existence was now enemy to the state. Point 2, rebellion of the wise men. This scripture is going to be opened up with Matthew chapter 2, verses 7 through 12. It reads, "Then Herod called for a private meeting with the wise men, and he learned from them the time when the star first appeared. Then he told them, 'Go to Bethlehem and search carefully for the child. When you find him, come back and tell me so that I can go worship him too.' After this interview, the wise men went their way, and the star they had seen in the east guided them to Bethlehem. It went ahead of them and stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were filled with joy. They entered the house and saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and worshipped him. Then they opened their treasure chest and gave him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. When it was time to leave, they returned to their own country by another route, for God had warned them in a dream not to return to Herod. Herod was now stuck between a rock and a hard place. As a Jew, the birth of the Messiah meant freedom and was a time to look forward to, but as a king, the birth of a rightful heir meant rebellion and was a time to be feared. A scenario in which one thing remains constant, that the two words, freedom and rebellion, are two sides of the same coin, all depending on where you stand to perceive it when it is presented to you. And the wise men knew this. I find it an interesting and telling detail that the Gospels portray these men who acted in open rebellion to the king through civil disobedience as wise. That the men who made a fool of the king, who disobeyed his orders and acted outside of his authority, will forever be remembered by the scriptures themselves as wise men. This is the wisdom of those whose trust is in God over man and whose obedience is to God over government. Part 3, outlawed by the state. After the wise men were gone, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream. "Get up, flee to Egypt with the child and his mother," the angel said. "Stay there until I tell you to return, because Herod is going to search for the child to kill him." That night, Joseph left for Egypt with the child and Mary, his mother, and they stayed there until Herod's death. This fulfilled what the Lord had spoken through the prophet, I call my son out of Egypt. Herod was furious when he realized that the wise men had outwitted him. He sent soldiers to kill all the boys in and around Bethlehem who were 2 years old and under, based on the wise men's reports of the star's first appearance. Herod's brutal action fulfilled what God had spoken through the prophet Jeremiah. A cry was heard in Ramah. Weeping and great mourning, Rachel weeps for her children, refusing to be comforted, for they are dead. Matthew chapter 2, verses 13 through 18. The rebellion of the wise men meant the loss of the only lead Herod had in the investigation of his treasonous usurper. Using the little information he had acquired from them, the boy criminal's estimated age and location, Herod issued the infamous executive order. He sent soldiers, militarized police by today's standards, to put him to death. These soldiers, officers carrying out the orders of their commander-in-chief, murdered and slaughtered thousands of children as a sacrifice on the altar of the state. I find it difficult to imagine that the citizens to continue to support these officers who are simply following orders, but then I think about the society in which we live today, and it no longer requires imagination. Jesus and his family flees the hands of the king, and his soldiers in worldly defiance, which is godly obedience, to the will of the state. He is now an outlaw, warranted for death without a trial, because his very birth had been powerful enough to threaten the kingdoms of the world. That is the conclusion of part 1. I don't want to go over too long, so I'm going to pick up the next video with part 2, Omega.